Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host Donnie, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Deucy.
Hello, everyone.
Deucy, how are you this fanciful Sunday afternoon? Since we're not recording on our typical Saturday.
Well, I am just happy to be here. I've made it here in one piece. This has been the weekend of hell.
I could tell. Just one storm kind of, threw everything off for a lot of people we knew, including yourself.
We had to make some postponements, but I am ready. I've been excited for this topic for a couple months now, just since we started kind of throwing it out there if we were going to do it or not.
Yeah, I think one of the more exciting episodes we do, and we only do it once a year for obvious reasons, is the best and worst of the year. Last year was obviously our first one since that was the first year we did the podcast, but it's always really great when we can recap all the games we've played throughout the year, and 2023 was a really, really good year for games. 2024 may not be as good, but I think it's still a really awesome year. Like I played a ton of games, but there's a lot of great stuff that came out this year.
And we have to stipulate that, just like last year, this is going to be games that we played. So it could be stuff from decades ago or even stuff that came out this year.
That's right, yeah. So for us, we've played modern games, and we also cover retro games on here too. So there's stuff that one of us may rediscover or discover for the first time, and it might be on here. So that's why this is a fun list, because it's also just us kind of culminating everything we talk about, because usually we have a segment in the beginning of the show where we talk about games we played.
Yeah.
Now we get to talk about all the great stuff we played and what was the best of everything, and some of the worst, which for us, I'd say our list, there isn't really a terrible game. There's just some games that we're more disappointed in. That's probably a more proper word for it.
Yeah, and even then, I always have a hard time finding disappointments because I usually just avoid them if I hear they're bad.
You're pretty good at steering clear. I'm the opposite, where it's like I'll play almost anything and like, oh crap, this was way worse than I thought. What happened here?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, they're not terrible games. So I think we have a really fun episode. We're coming off 2 weeks ago. We had a pretty popular Street Fighter the movie episode, which you haven't listened to, you should check out. And additionally, if you want to follow us on Instagram, we're at Legion Gaming Podcast. So do follow us there for all the news we post. We post a lot of collection stuff, stuff for upcoming episodes, movie clips, trailers.
Speaking of trailers, we can jump right into what we saw at the Game Awards, the official Game Awards.
Yes.
You posted a lot of the trailers on our Instagram.
There were some really exciting things this Game Awards. So it's funny to me because I think there's a segment of people who kind of dismiss the Game Awards, which, you're free. I dismiss the Oscars all the same. It's all just an award show, but you watch it because there's a lot of fun to be had there.
I mean, I dismiss the actual award giving.
Yeah.
And I like to watch for the trailers.
All the announcements.
Yeah.
Because they usually have a lot of great news. And this year, holy crap, Deucy, there's some stuff that I nearly crap my pants, actually, at some of the announcements.
Yeah, this one was probably the most surprising I've seen in a lot of different game announcements that we've had the past year, even the past couple of years. The first one that shocked me was probably Onimusha.
Yeah, I posted on our Instagram that I've really been waiting 20 years for a new Onimusha game. And I was always saying I wish they would do another Onimusha. And Capcom surprised everyone when they announced I forgot what it was called, like Way of Dreams or something like that, or Ashes of something. I forgot what it's called, what the subtitle is.
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's just a brand new Onimusha. It looks like it's on the RE engine, which I'm even more excited for because
that makes sense.
They've done some great work with that with the Resident Evil games, Devil May Cry, and even Dragon's Dogma was on the RE engine. So I'm excited as hell for Onimusha. That may be one of the biggest titles that they announced there, because I almost, like I said, I was like, what?
I was watching the award show, but I was watching a reaction to it, like we like triple jump watching things, and they were reacting to it and they didn't know what was going on, and I was like, I recognized those red little spirit things, and then the little blue crystal showed up, and then it said from Capcom, and I was like, ooh.
So I saw those red wisps of red souls, and like my mind immediately went, oh, this looks like Onimusha, but there's no way.
Yeah,
I was like, there's no way in hell they're gonna revive that. I thought it was
they're just ripping it off.
Yeah, like there's a lot of games that use those graphical effects that look like wisps and whatever. Like it could be anything. And then as soon as I saw his guard, like his I forgot what they call it, the Oni soul snatcher thing, I forget what it's called, but he absorbs souls with his gauntlet, and I was like, oh shit, like it's Onimusha. So I was really excited about that. And then in addition to that, there was also a new Okami coming out, which maybe even more shocking, because beyond that, Hideki Kamiya, who has a lot of history with Capcom and used to work for Clover Studio and everything, and he was previously at Tango Gameworks with Hi-Fi Rush, but he left there because, for one, they basically got shut down thanks to Microsoft, unfortunately, and bought by another company. But he felt like his sort of creative freedom was being stymied there. So he ended up forming a new studio called, I think it's called Clovers, plural, because that's what their old company name was. So it's almost like a sequel to that. And he's back with Capcom, and they're making new Okami. So that's another thing that was really exciting to me there.
I mean, has the Okami rights traveled with him, or have they always been at Capcom?
They've always been with Capcom, but I saw a headline. I didn't read much into it, but Capcom has said that they're interested in reviving some old stagnant series, which hopefully means Mega Man's coming, because that's a stagnant series.
Yeah, or Mega Man X.
Something like any Mega Man, really. So Okami and Onimusha are pretty deep in the bag of Capcom tricks that we haven't seen in a while. So I'm excited that if they revived Onimusha and Okami, I feel like anything is on the table at this point.
I think a lot of companies are finally getting back to that. Like Konami just put out the Silent Hill 2 remake, and then another one at the awards show that was announced was Virtua Fighter.
Oh, I can't wait for that one either.
So Sega's digging back into their old bag of tricks too.
Yeah, Virtua Fighter is, for one, that's mind-blowing to me that it's a 30-year-old series now. Like, it's kind of incredible that 3D fighting game started in 1994. And they haven't made they released a Virtua Fighter 5 update, I don't know, in the last couple of years on PS Plus. It was a freebie on PS Plus, and I think it's only $15, but it's basically just another arcade iteration of Virtua Fighter 5, which originally came out in 2006. So this hasn't seen a brand new numbered series in 18 years. So about half of the game's series existence, it hasn't made a game.
And this one didn't even have a number attached to it. Is it going to be kind of like a going back, kind of a remake, kind of like Soul Calibur 6
I'm not sure. I'd be curious, because all I saw was like that really cool video that it looked really realistic, and the fighting looked really amazing, like the way they choreographed it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they've announced so far as far as like, if it's going to be 6 or what they're going to do with it.
It looks like, because from what I saw from Tekken 8, Tekken was kind of getting fanciful. They had a lot of bright colors and sparks flying and mystical stuff. Virtua Fighter kind of looks down and dirty.
Which is what I like, because, back then, like, I'd say Virtua Fighter and Tekken were closer, but then Tekken started doing things with like juggles and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of expanding the combat mechanics of that. And it's straight further away from just like hand-to-hand martial arts to now it's like there's juggles, there's chains, there's all these other things you can link into and everything. And Virtua Fighter's always been like that, just 3D stock fighter where it's about outplaying your opponent. It's just like Street Fighter used to be, or is, I should say, where instead of being on a 2D plane, it's 3D, right? Like, there's no real other gimmicks other than just hand-to-hand martial arts. So I'm excited for it. I don't know when it's coming out. They showed like a small little teaser trailer, which I think was really exciting.
Oh, yeah, like none of the trailers in the award show had any definitive dates.
Yeah, and one I was actually kind of excited for that had no date either was the new Sonic Racing that's coming out.
Oh, I didn't even see that one.
It was a really quick teaser. I swear it must have been like 10 seconds long, but it just showed Shadow in a car. It looks like they're alluding to it transforming again, which is one of my favorite things that they ripped out of Team Sonic Racing, which is why I didn't like it as much. So I hope that is closer to Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transform, because that is like, down to me is one of the best kart racers ever next to like Mario Kart 8. Like, he doesn't get much better than that. Like, that is the Sega equivalent of Mario Kart.
We played that recently, when the guys were here and everything, but for some reason I couldn't get to it as much. It was fun, but the transformations were sort of abrupt, and as soon as I finally got the hang of like a car or got the hang of the boat controls, all of a sudden you changed, and I'm like, crap.
Well, the thing is there's definitely a learning curve to that game, and also the single player in there is, despite how much I love the game, is a real annoyance, because you eventually hit a wall where you have to go through like hard and expert races.
Oh yeah,
and the AI is just relentless, and like you have no room for error when you're racing. So there is a learning curve, which I think puts it apart from Mario Kart, because Mario Kart you can just jump in right away and get used to it.
They should take a bit of a page from that and have the transitions still, but have the vehicles all control a little more similarly.
Yeah.
Like when Mario Kart goes underwater or starts to fly, you don't have to relearn something. It's still like you're driving the cart, but you're just in the air or in the water. Mm-hmm. But like with these, it's definitely different.
They do feel like 3 distinct vehicles, which I think is great, but like I said, it's definitely something you have to get used to. It's not something you can just jump in and be like, oh, okay, cool, I can race just fine.
And like that was fun on Diddy Kong Racing when you had the 3 different vehicles, but you didn't change on the fly.
Yeah,
you knew what you were getting into.
Yeah. What else was there at the Game Awards that we could talk about? Oh, Intergalactic. That's the new...
I am looking forward to that.
Naughty Dog. I'm very excited for that. It looks like... Neil Druckmann, he's with Naughty Dog. They said that he said that was heavily inspired by Akira, which you could see, like the old anime movie. That's one of my favorite animes of the few animes I like. But it's like this. It's from the Uncharted developers. Last of Us is their brand new IP that they've been working on. It looks like it takes place in space. It looks heavily inspired by like Alien. Like even the main character kind of looks like Ripley a bit.
Oh yeah, I got a little bit of a hint of Guardians of the Galaxy as well, because it's like it's going to be retro futuristic. It looks like sort of from the 90s or 2000s, but also you're in space now. And I'm down for that. Like if they have like classic, I put that in air quotes, classic music from like our age, but you're playing it in the future as like the golden oldies and stuff. And then you're going around, there's like this giant laser sword that the person has, or laser chainsaw sword or something.
They showed a lot at once, and it's hard to really digest. Like I probably should go watch the trailer again. I was just watching, like, wow, there's every other second there's something cool happening. Yeah. You know? So I'm definitely excited for that. And you know, it's probably gonna be really, really good because, you know, whatever feedback or however critical you might be of like Last of Us getting remastered, blah, blah, Uncharted being remastered, blah, blah. The games at their core are freaking phenomenal games. Like they're still some of the best games you'll play on any console. So I'm excited for Naughty Dog. They rarely miss, and I have a feeling this is going to be just as good whenever it comes out. I think it's next year as well.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people were sort of like hemming and hawing about it because it was a brand new thing, but Naughty Dog has kind of shot themselves in the foot with all these remasters coming out. Like Last of Us 1 and 2 did not need remasters this close to their original thing. But like you said, they never miss when they're telling a story, whether it's new or old. Like I am looking forward to seeing what that story is and how it plays out. Another one where I'm looking forward to the story is Outer Worlds 2. I
was shocked that it was getting a sequel because I know that game it wasn't everyone's favorite, and I think people are too hard on it because they're just idiots, like most people who are just vocal on the internet. But I'm glad it's getting a sequel. That just means it was successful enough to get one, because I actually liked the theme and the humor of the game, and although I never finished it, I thought it was a really solid game for what I got to play.
Yeah, I mean, our avid listeners probably know it took me a while to get through that. It was on my what am I playing for like 4 or 5 episodes in a row. But I really enjoyed just the overall atmosphere of it. It was sort of like a more dumbed down version of Fallout, New Vegas, and other stuff by Obsidian. And I'm just looking forward to it because this trailer starts off right away with like an announcer, or what do you call that? He was narrating, a narrator that was just all camp and jokes. And I was like, no, this looks awesome. And then they actually had a good amount of gameplay shown during the trailer, and it just looks like more of everything that they already did. It was like, this is what we wanted in the first one, but now we're going to have like more powers, not just guns and stuff.
Yeah, I think they're definitely doing what a sequel should do, which is iterating and building upon the first one. And I have a feeling with as solid and as much as I enjoyed the first one, I've a good feeling that the second one's going to be even better, because Obsidian, again, they're a really good developer with really good pedigree, and you can argue about how great Outer Worlds was, but one thing they know is like world building and lore and everything else. Like there's a lot of veterans in there who know what they're doing. So I think it's going to be really great. I'm looking forward to that one too. That just means I also have to get myself to finish the first game before that comes out. So I'm a little behind. Granted, the game came out like 6 years ago now.
I'm sure it won't tie together like the Mass Effect series did.
Yeah.
But it will be fun to see if there's like little winks and nods to things you might have done in the first one.
I think I don't know when the second one takes place, but I'd be curious like how closely related it is to the first game. So that's really exciting to see. I was happy to see that. That was also a surprise. Again, like the biggest thing about the Game Awards is all the actual surprises, because there's stuff that gets announced here that doesn't get leaked. There's very few speculations beforehand.
Yeah.
But for the most part, most trailers I saw were brand spanking new outside the content I knew was coming. Like Helldivers 2 got an update, which I really would like to get back to that.
That looked really fun.
Yeah, it looked really great. I know the last episode we talked to Vita about how that game kind of had its peak popularity, kind of leveled out, then bottomed out because of the nerfs and changes they did, but then it's kind of coming back up because they're rebalancing the game to what players prefer.
Now, did I see there's like vehicles in it now?
I think that was one of the things, because that's one of the things that people were clamoring for is vehicles, because it does help, because otherwise you're just running these big areas.
Yeah, running a long way.
Yeah,
for some stuff.
I'm curious how those will change the gameplay, because adding vehicles seems like a pretty big change. That's pretty drastic for how the game was, on foot before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was really looking for that. That's a free update that's out now. What else was there, Deuce? Is there anything else you wanted to cover on there? I feel like we got all the big hitters out of the way.
That was the big stuff. The one that really kind of surprised me and confused me was right when I turned on the station, I came into it late, Splitgate 2.
Oh yeah, you texted me about that.
I was like, I didn't even know Splitgate 1 officially got released, because I remember when it was in like a beta access and early access, and then all of a sudden they're announcing 2, and I was like, first of all, I never got to play the first one. Second of all, when did that one come out?
Yeah, the first one. So I played it in beta because it was just a free beta, and it's a combination of kind of like Halo and Portal, because you could create portals at whatever point you want and run through them and whatnot. And I enjoyed it. I thought the idea was really cool, but there was nothing there to really keep me playing because it didn't seem like dry.
it didn't seem like they supported it much.
Yeah, and it was on beta for a while, and then I guess at some point it was released to a full release. I don't know when. I didn't keep track of it. And then we got part 2. So I don't know, that one. I'll keep an eye out for it. I don't know what's bigger and better about it because I was just so lukewarm to the first game.
Yeah,
but again, it's always cool when you see games successful enough, especially ones that are smaller, because that's probably, I'd imagine it's more like on the indie side more than like a big publisher side. So it's great when you see games like that get a sequel out of nowhere.
Yeah, hopefully it's a little more supported, and I would be willing to jump into it and see how it goes this time, because I was interested in the first one, and then like I said, it just sort of disappeared, and then nobody else was really talking about it or playing it, so I didn't want to go into it solo.
Yeah, well, we could check it out, I guess, too, because it is free to play at least. So that's why it's like, for me,
that's
one of those, like, if they're at worst, if you play a free to play game and you hate it, just you delete it.
Yeah,
you don't feel like you wasted $60, like, oh geez, this thing sucks. Yeah. All right, Deucy. So I guess now is the better time there. Let's get into the best and worst of 2024. All right, Deucy, we are here. It's shockingly the end of another year. We're about midway through December as we're recording, and in a few short weeks we'll be in 2025. And I feel like I said exactly that when we recorded this last year, going into 2024.
And last year, this episode, or this type of episode, we did like earlier. We did it in November.
Yeah, we did. We did it before some games released. I think the cutoff last year was we had Super Mario RPG come out right before we recorded. And
like the day before.
Yeah. which happens with one of the games on my list, actually. So it's kind of funny. It's almost like an annual tradition at this point.
Actually, I should have put that in one of my honorable mentions. I didn't, but like Mario RPG.
Oh, you did play that.
Since the last recording of a best of, I really liked that.
Yeah, it was fantastic. That one did make my list last year. I think I just slipped it in because I was like, I know I loved it that much. And I finished a few weeks later. Yeah. So how we're breaking this up, we're going to start with some of our disappointments and some of our most hated games, which, again, for us, we're pretty lenient. We don't really hate most games. We include one thing on here that we do hate. That's part of gaming.
Yeah,
but not the games themselves.
In fact, I think all of my games on here I don't hate.
They're just not great.
Yeah,
and then disappointed.
And then the other thing that's not a physical game, I do hate.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we balanced it out. And then we'll get into some of our honorable mentions because not everything will make our list. And then we'll get into our top 10 of the year, which I think is a pretty fun list for both of us because it's mostly different, which is really interesting. But that all shows that how many different games we played throughout the year.
As far as lists go, this is our most diverse.
I would say so. Yeah. And we also have a guest list that we'll read right before we get into our top 3. We have our friend Vito who sent us a list, his top 10 for the year. So we'll read that off as well. But Deucy, kick us off with I guess we'll get off with the most hated thing of gaming in 2024 for you.
Okay, so this is the thing I hated. And, I've heard about it happening before, and it never really happened to me until just a couple weeks ago. But the always online gaming. Mm-hmm. What the hell? Jesus. So this was a couple weeks ago. I was home, and for some reason, the internet just went out. I think it was a provider thing. It wasn't our modem or anything. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just play some games solo offline. I can't play Call of Duty, but I'll play something else. Literally, I couldn't play Call of Duty the campaign, which is a solo experience, not even a co-op.
Yeah, there's nothing tied to online for Call of Duty single player. There's no battle pass thing. There's no, some games have like an online component. There's nothing like that feeds in the Call of Duty single player.
And so when I clicked on Call of Duty, the little box, which is, what do they call that now? It's like the
COD HQ.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
it didn't even list Black Ops 6. It said, do you want to play Modern Warfare 3? I was like, no. And so that wasn't even an option. I was like, okay, whatever. On Game Pass recently, EA Sports brought out WRC, which is a World Rally Championship, and it's done by Codemasters. So I was like, oh, this is going to be pretty badass, because they did the Dirt series before, and then EA bought them, and now they're doing this. I go on there, it says, must be online to play. I'm like, no, I must not. I'm only trying to do this solo.
Yeah.
So instead, I ended up playing, and this is going to be on one of my lists later, NBA 2K25, which somehow, because it has a ton of online modes, I could play solo.
I was surprised about that because that game is one of the worst offenders for like microtransactions and all the what do you want to call it, the monetization it has. So I was shocked when you texted like, yeah, it works fine off. I was like, wow, that's good on them, because I wouldn't have expected that with them. 2K is pretty notorious for online features.
Like the only thing that didn't load up on the main menu was their little NBA TV thing. And I never pay attention to that anyway. All of a sudden I could just travel the menus and go to franchise mode and got a couple games in. I was like, thank God for that.
Yeah. Yeah. My sort of grievance for the year is the grievance I have with any company in any industry. It's the massive layoffs that have resonated across the gaming industry as a whole, from virtually every publisher, every company. They've laid off something, because typically what happens is publishers want to go after some gem to get high conversion or make the most money. And what happens, they have these insanely overbloated budgets. The game fails miserably. And it's not the decision holders who are on the chopping block, it's everyone below them. I read some statistic earlier this week, I should say, that around 16 to 20,000 developers have lost their jobs just in 2024 alone, which is a disgusting statistic when we have some, like Ubisoft CEOs making like tens of millions of dollars a year. And at worst, it's like you're doing this right before Christmas, right before the holidays. And it's really unfortunate when you see games that really should be thriving, and instead the people who make these games are just tossed aside like anything else. So this year's been especially bad for layoffs.
I think what's really crappy when you look at it, when you really look at it under a microscope, is that the games, like you said, are over budgeted, and then they just look bad or they play bad. And it's because of those top decision makers telling the developers, no, we want this, we want that. And the developers are going, we don't want to make that like that, because look at the rest of the industry. Like, people didn't play game A. What makes you think they're going to play our game now because of that? And all of a sudden they're like, well, you did poorly, so goodbye.
Yeah. Or it's like there's some instances, like there's some games on our list we'll talk about. Like, I'll point one out, like Prince of Persia, where that game is one of the best Metroidvanias that came out this year, and it's one of the better Metroidvanias you'll play. It sold about 1 million copies. That wasn't enough for Ubisoft. They laid off the entire company. And to me, that's just absolutely disgusting that they can make such a well-crafted game, and their payment is, it's just, you lose your job. Sorry, like, it wasn't successful enough because it didn't meet these metrics we made up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, at the same time, like, I know Prince of Persia had its own faults, but it's just like, who's really making the decisions here? It's like, it's not the developers. They made an incredible game, and instead some decision makers decided that it wasn't financially viable or wasn't successful, so we're just going to lay everyone off, cut our losses, write a tax write-off, whatever the case is. So that's my soapbox moment for 2024 because that's stuff that anytime I read it, it just honestly just pisses me off so bad that, and it's just so normal now. It's
not even based on performances solely. Like, other things are happening where Microsoft eats up another big company, and now you have like duplicates at the positions. And so obviously somebody's got to get laid off because we don't need 2 of this or 2 of that. Yeah. And that's another thing that's happening, is not just, it's like Pac-Man eating other Pac-Man.
It's the consolidation of the gaming industry is what it is, right? And it's like we have like Microsoft CEO, the guy who's well above like Phil Spencer and all that. He's making $50 million a year.
Yeah.
Like, he just got a raise to that. $50 million a year. No one person should be making $50 million. I don't even know how to think about $1 million. Let alone make that 50 a year. And then these guys who are making these games are, have the unfortunate, I guess, fortune here of working at a company that was absorbed by Microsoft or another company, and their reward there is, well, sorry that you put in all this hard work. We don't need you. We're just laying you off. And then Phil Spencer get a raise or something,
And then they wonder why these CEOs are getting capped in the streets.
Yeah.
Sorry, we won't talk about that here.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our worst of the year, really. The rest
Yep.
are the disappointing games. So Deucey, go ahead with your first disappointment.
My first disappointment, I did talk about when I was playing it and when I finished it, is Close to the Sun. And I almost forgot about it because it was kind of forgettable. And it was way back in like February, I think I finished it. But then it dawned on me, I was like, oh yeah, I was disappointed in that ending. Everything else should have been good for me. Like it was just a little walking sim where you discover the lore of the world that they were building. But then it just felt so rushed, and they did not capitalize on a time travel aspect, which is like, that's like easy to do in any game. Like that's the main thing these days is multiverses and time travel. Like how did you fumble?
Maybe it's one of those things where they feel like they had to be intentionally different, and it just kind of end up shooting themselves in the foot. Because I know some storytellers do that where it could go the typical way, but they'll try to kind of break the mold, and it just kind of breaks the mold in a bad way.
Yeah.
Like you accidentally drop something, like, oops. You know?
I think, yeah, they just dropped the mold and lost it.
Yeah. All right, so for one on my list, Dragon's Dogma 2. This came out in March 2024, somewhere around there. And I was pretty excited about this. I hadn't played too much of the first game, but it was a Capcom game. It's sort of like, what's the word like for it? It's sort of like Monster Hunter in a certain way, but it's its own, single-player RPG. And you have pawns that help you. They're basically like your companions. You can assign them, tasks and AI tasks and whatnot. But I played this and like I could not get into it. Like I tried and like the story was just, I couldn't even tell what the story was. I got like 5 hours into it and it was just so boring. There was nothing for the story that hooked me into it. The combat was kind of fine. Like, a lot of people loved it, but I got kind of annoyed with it because there's like stamina and there's these other things where it just feels kind of clunky. Like I'm not in fully control of things. And on top of that, it's like a massive RPG. You can only save at certain points, which people have made mods to save anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess they also patched it to make it easier to save. But it's like, I don't want to deal with this where it's like one death, because it's also a bit of a Souls-like, where one death will put me back further wherever it was, but I should have paid for a save point. So I was really disappointed with this game. I was not a big fan. I know people kind of like it, but this was definitely a miss for me for as excited as I was.
I didn't even want to try it because I had heard Dragon's Dogma 1 was similar. And I thought, doesn't sound like they've changed much.
Yeah, they made it bigger, and it's definitely a little bit better than the first game. But to me, it's just, you can have great combat mechanics and everything else, but if there's no story to make me care or explore, then I'm just bored as hell. You know, like I dropped. That's what happens. Like, unfortunately, I paid for this. I wish I could have rented it, but unfortunately, I got past the Steam refund policy, so now I'm stuck with it. Maybe someday I'll go back to it, but I was definitely disappointed with this one.
I guess now you could try maybe with the patches.
Yeah, like maybe it's better now with the updates, but when I played, I was like, I'm just not into this at all. Yeah. Your next one, Deucey.
My next one is kind of, I don't know. It was hard to place. I didn't want to put it as an honorable mention, but it also wasn't a huge disappointment because I avoided things. It's Modern Warfare 3. I guess I'm most disappointed in that the end of Modern Warfare 2's campaign was like kind of a cliffhanger and setting up for this big story where Modern Warfare 2019 and then Modern Warfare 2 are a retelling of the original trilogy of Modern Warfares back in the early or late 2000s. So I was really looking forward to 3. But then all of a sudden 3 came out like right away. And you could tell it seemed like a cash grab and like a DLC add-on to Modern Warfare 2. And the campaign was just total garbage. Like they tossed it aside because they wanted you to do the multiplayer in Warzone, which that was, like I said, the biggest disappointment because I didn't play this all year. I think we jumped in finally at around season 5. I did enjoy the multiplayer then, but I never really got back into Warzone and I never did the campaign, even whatever weird thing they did with it. I didn't even want to try. So I have no idea how that story ended. And yeah, it just sucks.
Yeah, I didn't bother with the single player Modern Warfare 3 at all either because I had heard it was just like Warzone but single player, which Warzone's fun when it's Warzone, but you don't want that for like your single player story driven game,
Yeah.
And also, I probably would have put Warzone on my disappointments list, but I just didn't really want to talk about it. But it is kind of crap now, like with all the changes they did. So I'd say it's fair, like maybe Modern Warfare 3, and we'll tie it with Warzone for disappointments because my friends and I, we've completely stopped playing Warzone because it's just not fun anymore. It's at the point where I think I was talking about the last episode too, where you barely land and you get shot out of the air or something stupid. So we're just like, all right, this is about the point where we have to wait for them to fix it or we just don't go back to it kind of thing.
Well, I don't know how it could be fixed because the main thing that's happening to it is the new Omni movement from Black Ops.
Yeah, and the guns too. I don't know what they did with the guns, but it just nothing feels good, which sucks because this game was really fun even when it was not fun. Yeah. Right? Like, you know, like those moments where it's like you're just dying over and over. But now it's just like, all right, this is just annoying. It's done.
I guess even with the Omni movement though, we do have to jump back in when Verdansk comes
Oh, of course. Back. That's what's gonna hook us in no matter what.
Yeah.
Whether we're playing it now or not, when Verdansk comes back, we're definitely gonna try that out. Yeah. All right, so next on my list is Senua's Saga Hellblade 2.
Oh, yeah.
So I really, really love the first Hellblade game. It was by Ninja Theory, who they make these really well-realized games that people just don't really gravitate to. Like they did Enslaved Journey of the West, which was really good. They did DMC, the Devil May Cry reboot, which a lot of people hated, but it's actually a really fun game once you get past Dante's redesign.
Yeah.
And Hellblade was really cool because it's this really heavy story-driven game that was, you know, kind of linear, and it had some light puzzle solving, some, you know, really kind of basic combat that was still fun. So I was really excited for 2 because it was an Xbox exclusive. That's really one of the big reasons why I got a Series X was for Hellblade 2. And it took a while to come out. It came out, and it's definitely one of the most gorgeous games you'll ever see, and that's about it. I played a couple hours and like it's basically just like a walking simulator. It's so slow. It's more of a environmental kind of storytelling game or anything else, almost like a walking sim, but not. And I just couldn't get into it. I was just like, God, I was looking so forward to this. And like the story just can't quite hook me. I'm not a fan of the pace of the game, like just trudging through a line because you also can't explore much. Like you're almost like on rails in some sections.
Yeah.
So I was really disappointed. It sucks because I wanted to love this game and nothing could hook me into it.
This is like the epitome of our disappointment list is when it's single-handedly selling you on a system and then it falls.
And it just fails. And like I'd like to finish it. I don't know if I will because it's only like 5 or 6 hours, I think. 5 to 7 hours. It's not terribly long, but it's just
a slog.
A slog. When I played, I was like, oh God, like I'm going to be trudging through like this. Like I can't deal with this right now. Next one on your list, Deucy.
Another disappointment that I didn't even realize or maybe remember was Turok 2. We had to play the trilogy for our episode recently, and man, that one fell short for me. Like I do enjoy the weapons, but because that's what Turok is known for. Oh, by the way, that was another surprise.
Oh, that's right, Turok Origins.
Yeah, there's a new Turok coming.
How can we forget? After we were just talking about in that episode, I was talking about how, God, I wish we'd make a new one. And then our friend of the show, Doyle, texted me the trailer for that, or he sent me the trailer on Instagram. I was like, yeah, we just saw this, and it's funny because we were just talking about how we wanted the new one.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for Turok Origins. I don't know. I hope they won't mess it up, but it looks freaking cool from what they showed.
When they weren't saying what it was at first, but I was like, there's a dinosaur, and here comes this like laser arrow.
Yeah,
this is gonna be awesome.
I thought it was gonna be Ark Survival 2 or something like that.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
But I was very surprised it was Turok. I was
like,
really excited.
Turok, be Turok, yay!
Yeah. So we willed that into existence.
But when it comes to Turok 2, boo.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the first one. I'm almost done with that one. I have like one more key to get before I get to the final boss. And Turok 3, I want to sit down and finish because that was a surprise of the year. But this one, man, they fumbled.
They did. I agree. We talked about it pretty well at length in our Turok episode, which you should go listen to. I think it was episode 47, something like that. It's pretty recent. And we talked about how, despite the ambition of Turok 2, it falls in a lot of spaces where it matters. Most notably, like being able to know where you're going and these overly designed levels that just don't work because you're more lost and confused more than anything else.
Yeah.
So I think it's a solid choice to have in your disappointments because there's just too much that gets in the way of the enjoyment of that game. Like it's a gorgeous N64 game. It's also not one very fun to play.
I'm trying to put myself also back in my shoes when we were younger, where if I had played Turok 1 legitimately without all those cheats and I played it like I did now, to then go into Turok 2 and be completely lost in the first level, I would have been pissed.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah. All right, Deuce, I'm going to get into the last couple of games we have on our list. So I'll go with mine because we have one that's on both our disappointment lists. So
yeah.
The one I'll go with here is Mario vs. Donkey Kong on Switch. This is the remake of the Game Boy Advance one. There's nothing bad about this game. It's just, it's 60, 64 levels, somewhere around there. And once you're done with it, they're all kind of, the same. And it's not very exciting at some point. Like I played through this game and I was just like, all right, well,
I did it.
I did it.
Yeah.
Nothing exciting. It was pretty bare bones. I just felt like, I don't know what I expected from this one, but I was hoping I would have a little bit more fun with it, because at the end it's like the puzzles went from very easy to just kind of complex.
Yeah.
And there's nothing really dynamic about it. Like once you have a set solution, then you just go for that, and that is what it is.
And I think you said it right there. It was only complex. It didn't get hard, but there was just more to do in the later levels. But I was tired by then.
You're kind of going through the motions.
I was just like, okay, I know what I have to do, but I don't want to sit there and wait for it to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not a bad game. It's just, this is one of the games that really should have been like a budget release, like $20 or $30, but it launched at $50, which I think is a little too much for what it is.
Well, I didn't even realize when I first got it that it was just a remake of the original.
Yeah.
Which I think it didn't make my list of disappointments or honorable mentions because it was just sort of there. And I had owned and played the original on Game Boy Advance, but I never finished it. And then this was a good opportunity for me to finally finish it. But at the same time, it was like, okay, I did it. Like, I could see why it was the first of its genre, because it was just sort of bare bones. And I think they sort of added that second mode where it changes up the way you play the levels a little.
Yeah, it does. But after you finish everything.
It wasn't enough to make me go through every level again.
Yeah, because by then you were just tired of it. Like,
yeah.
It's like I said, 64 levels or so, somewhere around there. And that's it. You're just kind of tired of it at the end. Like, I'm sure this hooked some people, but for me, like, I played through it and it was just, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
it was fun for a playthrough. I doubt I'll ever go through it again, you know. And then the final one we'll both talk about here is Nintendo World Championships, which I know this one we were both very, very excited when it was launched or announced, because it was just basically just a nostalgia bomb for us. Like, they're saying like this World Championship phenomenon that happened in the 80s, we're sort of bringing it back in a new way. There's like 11 games on here with all these challenges that look cool. And for me, once you get past sort of the honeymoon period of how awesome it is, the gimmick kind of wears thin. And for me, I wish there was more of this. There needs to be online play. Like, it really sucks that it's restricted to one player, or you have like, like what do they call it every week that they change the challenges? It's just Nintendo World Championships.
Yeah, the championships.
So that's the only sort of online connectivity you have here. And in addition to that, there's no leaderboards for any of the challenges. So you're really just beating your own scores, which, you get your own mileage out of that. And then on top of that, the multiplayer for me was kind of weak. Like, the offering was weak. Like, it had these.
Well, I kept beating you. So.
Well, no, it isn't with that. It's just in terms of options. I don't give a shit about.
No, they didn't have a custom.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is like, I don't care about being beat. My problem is like, there's these packages of challenges, and that's it. Like, there's no randomized 50. There's no randomized 100. It's like these prepackaged challenges that they had, or you could choose them randomly if you want.
But
and
it
do
wasn't
one at a time.
But you couldn't choose individual ones and make your own custom packages.
Yeah, so it just felt like this was really bare bones to me. Like, I think this could be really great, and it just feels like they kind of released half of our product to me.
And this also wasn't on my disappointments until recently. I was even going to praise it a little because I did like it, and I enjoyed it a lot longer than you did. But then finally, we're in, I don't know what month we're in when it came out, compared to when it came out, but they haven't changed anything.
They've done nothing.
They haven't added anything. And then I realized, like, some parts of World Championship were based on points when it came to the competition, and they don't have anything. It's all just
it's all time trials. Yeah. And then my biggest quirk with it beyond all is they wasted 2 game slots for Ice Climbers and Balloon Fight.
Yeah.
Like, those are great for their historical significance to Nintendo, but they're not fun to play, like, in any regard. And these bite-sized 10-second challenges, they're just not fun to play.
Especially Balloon Fight, because that's like a weird slow-paced game that kind of ramps up.
It feels like a worse Joust.
Yeah. Oh God, I hate Joust. I played that recently.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But no, Balloon Fight I'm okay with. Ice Climbers sucks. I don't want to play that. I don't care.
That was the worst playing by far.
Yeah.
Of the selection. Yeah.
I recently watched this thing where they got teens to play old Nintendo games. And you know how they have their opinions on like old stuff that's old, but they really enjoyed Balloon Fight in multiplayer. Mm-hmm. So I figured, like, if we played that back in the day, not on this World Championships game, it probably would have been fun 2-player. But yeah, this with the time trials and not even getting to do anything online. Like, if you're at home and I'm at home, we can't go on. Like, couch co-op was fun for a little bit, but not
it wears thin
enough.
pretty quickly. Whereas, like, when this was announced, I swore it was gonna be like something we could play together and, like, have fun doing challenges and whatever. But it's just not fun to play at a certain point. Like, even the challenges they have, they're not really like I think what was there like 10 to 12 different packs. I forgot how they divvied it up.
Yeah, I can't
But
remember.
within their sort of sets of games you could play, not all of them have all of them that are available. So it's just like a minor selection of like 150 challenges, wherever it is. So it just feels like a miss. Like I feel like this game could be really good, and they just kind of didn't focus on some things they should have focused. And it's just really just an offline adventure that really wears thin pretty quickly.
I'm still holding out hope that they surprise us, kind of like with that Mario Kart 8 upgrade.
Yeah, the
where
booster pack.
Yeah, they brought out all these old tracks and characters and stuff. They can still do something with this. Or, because they call it the NES edition, I'm also hoping that there's going to be like an SNES edition eventually.
Or even just add more games. I don't know, just add more challenges, more options. Like they have a good base there. They just need to do more with it.
Yeah.
All right, so that wraps up our disappointments and the worst of 2024. So now we'll get into our honorable mentions. So Deucy, go ahead and run through your list real quick here before we get into our top 10.
So I wanted to start off with kind of some basics like sport games that come out annually. Formula 1 2024 and NBA 2K25. I always usually skip a generation here and there. When it comes to basketball, I haven't played since like 2K20 or something like that. But I really enjoyed getting back into this. I showed you that eras mode. Like you can do franchises by the eras, and then the presentation looks like it's from the 90s or the 80s or something like that. F1 24 is always a good time. I always enjoy Formula 1 racing. I can usually make it a little more of a competition compared to real life Formula 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are great. Only honorable mentions because I mean another one's going to come out next year, and I'll probably have that on the list too.
You only get so much enjoyment out of it before you get to the next one.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance. I was pleasantly surprised with that when I finally got to play it. I always thought all these years it was just Super Nintendo but miniaturized, but they changed up things here and there. They made it a little fresher. Turok 3, an honorable mention, because like I said, I was very surprised with that as well and want to continue playing that one. The Black Ops 6 multiplayer, that has been a great time. Fun.
Yeah, I've been having a real good time with that one for sure.
It got me, like I said, we completely skipped Modern Warfare 3, but Black Ops 6 has gotten me back into it. Mario Party Jamboree, another one where like we have missed a ton of Mario parties in the past. And that All-Star one that came out last year.
Yeah.
And now
Superstars, yeah.
And then this one have really got me back into Mario Party.
Yeah, this one, I almost put this on my list. I'm glad you did because I didn't want to talk about it a little bit because this was a pleasant surprise for both of us.
Yeah.
And I feel like coming off the Nintendo World Championships, this is exactly what we need for multiplayer as far as like the lighthearted stuff. Because it is sort of return to form. It's a lot of fun. Like if you don't have Jamboree, you should definitely check it out.
It's also fun playing together and watching the computer just kick your ass.
Yeah, the computer in this game is pretty brutal even on normal. Like there were some really hilarious moments Deuce and I had where like Deuce needed to get like 3 spots to steal a star, and like every time he was getting 1.
I got 1 for 3 turns in a row.
I don't know how the statistics of that, but yeah, he missed that boat. And the AI would get like exactly the amount to get a star. You know, it's really funny, but it's, you know.
Or it would find a hidden block.
Yeah.
And suddenly that would be a star.
Exactly.
You're like, you're just sitting there going, of course.
Yeah. So it's a real good time. I've been having a lot of fun with that one. Yeah.
And then the last 2 on my list are very recent. Retro Goal, which I've mentioned in the past couple episodes. Great time still playing that one. And Power Rangers Rita's Rewind, which we expected to be good, and I think it's delivered.
Yeah, it's really I'd say it's really good. I have some issues with it, mostly around the game's balance, because I think the game is fun as hell, but it has these on-rail shooter levels, but they're kind of reminiscent of Space Harrier, which I really like. It's like a shooter level, but the difficulty's tuned a little too high, even on normal. Like it's really cheap. There's a lot of cheap hits. Some of the bosses also are just brutally cheap.
They really expect you to be playing with teammates.
Yeah, so you know, I know they'll patch it. Like I've seen digital clips say that they're working on it, which is great. But it's really good. It is really good. But as far as like, you know, for me, like the benchmark is Shredder's Revenge and Streets of Rage 4. I think Rita's Rewind falls short of that, which is why it wasn't on my list. But it's a damn great nostalgia bomb. It's a really good beat 'em up. It's just not Shredder's Revenge or Streets of Rage 4. You know?
For me, when you talk about those 3, because they're the return to form for those games, it makes my list because it comes in second. For me, it's above Streets of Rage 4, but definitely not the Turtles game.
Yeah, the Turtles is just like bliss.
Yeah,
right there. Turtles, like I said, Streets of Rage 4 and Turtles, that's like beat 'em up bliss right there. But Ryu's Ryan is great at the start. I'd say it's a little bit of a hard sell at $35 for some people. I didn't care because I love Power Rangers and beat 'em ups.
Yep.
So it was worth it for me. Plus, I'd like to support Digital Clips for all the great stuff they do. But it's a great time. I figured this would make one of our lists at least. Yeah. All right, my list. I'll try to be brief here. So I have RoboCop Rogue City. I played at the beginning of the year. This takes place between RoboCop 2 and 3. It's also RoboCop's voiced by Peter Weller. This is another sort of B-level game by Teon Games. They made Terminator Resistance, which I really loved, which was also like a lower budget game, but they absolutely nailed the license to a T, which is what they did with RoboCop.
I want to play both of these, Terminator and RoboCop.
RoboCop's really great. The reason it didn't make my top 10 list is because towards the end, it just becomes a bit of an endurance run. Like there's a lot of enemies at once. You fight a couple Ed 209s, which are just damage sponges and bullet sponges. So it just kind of loses its luster at that point.
Wait, they don't have stairs readily available?
No, so what I did is actually to cheap them out is I was up above them because they can't they can't go on stairs.
Yeah.
So I was like shooting them through like railing nonstop while willing health away. It was really stupid.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. It was a great time for, I love RoboCop, so that's also what helped. If this was any other license, it would have been just a generic shooter that I wouldn't have cared about really. But RoboCop really makes it a great game. I have Gravity Circuit, which is a 2D platformer that's very reminiscent of Mega Man. I played this earlier in the year. I breezed right through it. It has the same format of Mega Man where it's like you go through, you collect a boss's weapon or a chip, and then you have like a boss endurance run at the end. I had a great time with it. It's just, it looks like a 2D Mega Man game, but a little bit of a 16-bit flair to it,
Yeah, I played a little bit of it, and it was very, not complicated. What's the word I'm looking for? In depth with the chipsets and stuff like that.
You can customize your playstyle with those.
Complex, I guess you could say, but it's also pretty difficult. So I don't think I ever beat one of the bosses, but I
forgot where you got stuck because you and I were talking about that during the episodes. Like, oh yeah, I beat it right. And you're like, oh, I'm stuck on wherever the hell it was.
Yeah, the first boss or something like that. I got to the part where you can choose at least. But yeah, that was a fun time.
Yeah, I loved it. It's one I almost forgot about until I went through my list.
This also reminds me of another Game Awards trailer that we saw, the new Ninja Gaiden.
Oh yeah, how can I forget that?
Yeah.
That's by Dot Emu, who is the same publisher as Streets of Rage 4 and Turtles, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited for that. The art looks incredible, and I always love Ninja Gaiden.
Because I mentioned that there's all these games coming out, like The Messenger, Gravity Circuit. They're all homages to these old games, and then they were just like, no, why don't we actually go back to one of these old games and bring it out?
OGs. Sega's doing the same thing with like Crazy Taxi. I think Shinobi's getting a new one and a few others. So I'm excited. I'm very excited for these old series to come back to life. Next one I put on the list is Mullet Mad Jack. It's a PC first-person roguelike that goes at like a breakneck speed, so it's right up my alley. The idea of the game is like you're going up this skyscraper to kill rogue billionaires because this is very much in like a dystopic post-apocalyptic future. So everything's kind of like 80s neon, and you're going up this skyscraper, and each chapter of sorts is 10 floors, so you're going up each one, and there's a boss at the end. You kill like this big rogue billionaire, but the big gimmick of the game is that each floor you have 10 seconds to finish it, which means that you're killing enemies because you get time for doing that. You get time for, throwing them to environmental hazards, stuff like that, combos. You basically have to continually kill or get bonuses to make it to the end of the level because you only have 10 seconds to do so. I love this game because it's just something I could pick up and play. It's like I could literally play it for 10 minutes or an hour and a half, whatever it is, but I love this one. The next one, this is a big RPG that got released this year, and it got some notoriety at the Game Awards for winning a few. It's Metaphor Refantasio.
Yeah, didn't it win Best RPG?
It won Best RPG, and I don't know if it won Best Soundtrack or something, or Best Narrative, something like that. This is a really cool JRPG by Studio Zero, published by Sega and Atlas. So this is very much like the Persona games, where it's like you have this press turn system where you have to exploit enemies' weaknesses, and you get like an extra turn. The reason I can't get into Persona games is because I like the demon aspect and like this post-apocalyptic demon high schooler gimmick, but then I really hate these social aspects of like high school life where you have to, it's a big part of the game.
Yeah.
And Metaphor Refantasio is sort of like a medieval version of that, but with less emphasis on the social crap. So it's a lot more streamlined than Persona. The art design and UI just look amazing. Like whoever the graphic designer is just did an amazing job. And it feels like one of those old PS1 Saturn RPGs where you have like these really eclectic character designs and art style that's really defined, but it's still rooted in JRPG, but with like really great enhancements where like, one of the things with old RPGs is like when you get into grinding for XP, you would, get into a battle screen, one shot the enemy and get out. This game simplifies that where it's like, it's sort of like real time in the sense where you can slash around. So weaker enemies get killed instantly. You don't even have to go to a battle screen and do turn-based stuff.
Nice.
But if you fight like, a level or an enemy who's equal to your level, then you go to like a battle screen and, the turn-based side comes out. So it does stuff like that where it streamlines the gameplay. The reason this didn't get on my list is because other games on my list took up my time, and this is a beefy game.
Oh, so I mean, have you gotten very far into it? Or?
I've gotten like 10 hours in, and apparently it's like 60 or 80 hours or something crazy. I've been enjoying it though. It can be tough, but it's really interesting. Another one is Black Myth Wukong. This is kind of like a Devil May Cry beat 'em up, more on the soul side. It looks really great. This is it's sort of like an interpretation of the Chinese novel Journey to the West. So you play as like the destined one who's like the Monkey King, and you're out to get these 6 relics, and it's really good. But again, like I hit a wall as far as difficulty, and then I end up playing something else, so I have to get back to it. But it's a really great game. Helldivers 2, we talked about it a little bit earlier with the Game Awards. This was a great multiplayer game when we were into it. I was into it with friends. That was a great time. PSVR 2, I got a set for back to school during a back to school sale, and I had PSVR 1. I really enjoyed that, but truthfully, like it was such a hassle to set up with all the cables, the boxes. That was just kind of a pain in the ass to set up and play.
Yeah, this is like what, one cable?
One cable. That's it. One cable. You got your controllers. That's it. So I've been having a great time with this, most notably with games like Beat Saber, which just came out with a Metallica pack that I've been playing, which has been a great time.
God, that looked insane when you were on normal.
Yeah, it's so damn fun though. I mean, there's like a Linkin Park pack. There's like a classic rock pack. It's sort of like Guitar Hero, but with your hands in your body. It's really great.
You get a workout going.
Yeah, Resident Evil 4 VR is another standout.
Oh man, that should have been on my top 10.
I'm surprised that wasn't, because you love that one.
But I also don't get to play it unless I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. You got to play like whenever you're around. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also Tetris Effect Connected, which is a great VR experience. Like that is just. You played that one, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you played that one through.
Yeah, I got you a couple high scores on
That's right. Yeah, because I had to have you try that. And then Gran Turismo 7.
I can't do that one though.
I love that one. It's so fun. It's such a trip. So there's a lot on PSVR. There's a lot I haven't touched, but I've been having a great time with that. It looks really stellar, and it feels really great. So I was really happy to play that. Animal Well. This is an indie game that came out this year. It's by one person, Billy Basso. He worked at NetherRealm Studios and a bunch of other studios previous to this. It's published by Video Game Donkey. He's a YouTuber. I don't watch him. Video Game Donkey has a publishing company called Big Mode. And this is a non-linear sort of Metroidvania labyrinth game. It's really cool. It doesn't tell you much. There's a lot of like environmental cues that you kind of have to look out for to progress. It's a unique experience. It's worth playing. It's only like 5 or 6 hours. It's just kind of obtuse though. Like you really have to dedicate to understand what puzzles to solve and what to use with your tools to get past it. And the final game I mentioned on here is Marvel Rivals. Free-to-play games can be hard for me to get into because you either one, get bored of it because it's board solo. You might hit like a paywall where it's like you just physically cannot really progress because it's at a point where they're forcing you to spend money. And this one, I was looking forward to it, but I was tempering expectations like with anything. And so far, I like it a lot. It's a free-to-play game that is very much inspired by Overwatch, down to like the class styles and like the archetypes and even like the format when you start a match. Like it's very much like Overwatch, but I'm having a lot more fun with it than Overwatch, and partly is because of the Marvel license.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That definitely helps. And on top of that, I'm shocked at how generous they are with 33 characters right off the bat to play as. No gimmicks, nothing else. You just you download the game. There's 30 big Marvel characters from like the most obscure, like Jeff the Landshark. No idea who he is.
Oh, he's a recent comic
is he?
Sensation.
Okay, so
like, people are loving him.
Yeah, well, people love him in this game as well. There's Cloak and Dagger. There's Iron Man, Wolverine. Like there's a lot. They have a lot of breadth in this game. So I hope that we can play it co-op because it is a fun time. Like you definitely lose if you don't have like a proper team synergy, but when you're in the moment playing it, it's nothing but fun because you're seeing a bunch of Marvel characters just fly around, abilities going all over the place, trying to take over points. There's a level of destructibility that Overwatch doesn't have, so like you can destroy sort of walls and structures to get through things.
Oh, I noticed that recently. Somebody played a clip, and because they didn't even talk about that when they were advertising the game.
They should, because it does, it does change the gameplay quite a bit because you're not blocked by something.
Yeah,
and great, not everything's destructible, but certain areas are. So while this definitely looks like an Overwatch ripoff. Maybe it is, but it has enough to stand on its own 2 legs, one above what Overwatch does, because I could not get. I enjoy Overwatch every now and then, but you tie the Marvel license to it and the team based aspect to it and everything you're familiar with, and it's a real fun time. Even if it wears off in a few months, I don't know. I'm having a great time so far.
I hope it surpasses Overwatch.
I hope so. Yeah, because this is definitely when they're not so focused on esports, which I think is also the thing because there's no role lock in here, so it's kind of a blessing to curse because everyone could play as whoever they want, but ideally you want like a proper makeup of your team for classes to win. But sometimes you don't need that.
I also, like you said, there's like 30 some odd characters and multiple characters are in each class. So you can choose just your favorite Marvel character and hope that they're in the class that's needed and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Whereas like Overwatch seemed kind of tied to one per class, maybe two.
It's very restricted to the role. So Overwatch, I think there's 5v5 now, and it's always like you need like 2 tanks, 1 DPS, and like a healer.
A healer, yeah.
Which you could do here too, but again, it seems like so far like I don't know how balanced it is, whatever, but it doesn't matter. Like you play whoever you want, and the team synergy doesn't seem to be a big deal. But once it synergizes, it's great. And on top of that, you have team up attacks. So like certain configurations of teams, like even the Avengers, they get ability bonuses or something else, right? So you have the aspect where it's like if you do have a team, you roll in deep with as the Avengers or Hulk and Wolverine to do the Cannonball special. You can do that in this game. So it's wherever they've done so far, it's really good. I hope they carry the momentum and do good things and not like nerf it or change the game for the worse. Because right now, like I said, the honeymoon phase is really good with this game.
I didn't put it on any of my lists because I just haven't gotten enough time with it. I did do the tutorials, the single player tutorials, and then I was hoping to play it this weekend, but womp womp. But I was impressed with what I saw from the tutorials and how it could play, and I was also impressed with the store. Like, it's not pay to win; it's like pay if you enjoy the skins from movies.
It's all cosmetics so far,
which
is great. I love when a free-to-play game is like, we just let the people who want to buy this stuff and invest in it do it. And if you want to buy a costume, go ahead. Otherwise, you don't need you don't have to pay for a weapon or a certain character. You know, there is available. I don't know what they'll do with future characters. The thing is, I don't know how they'll unlock later because I don't know. I imagine maybe it's tied to a battle pass. I have no idea what they're doing. But again, 33 off the bat, it's pretty impressive roster. All right, Deucy, we can finally get to our top 10 lists. So let's go ahead and kick off with your number 10 for the year.
My number 10, and since I've beaten it, it might have gone up a little, but my number 10 is Black Ops 6, the campaign, just the single-player story. Holy crap. Like, this is probably one of the best ones they've done in many years. And I was just impressed with each level was different. And except for the last, I'd say 5 or 6 that went back and forth between the two scenarios that were happening. But other than that, like every level was different and it just seemed to pay homage to every other FPS or spy game that's come before.
Yeah.
Like there was you're at a gala event for Bill Clinton of all people. And it felt very much like the EA James Bond games. Like Nightfire and Agent Under Fire and stuff, where you have to be undercover and you go around talking to people to do the objectives, and then at some point you get turned loose, and now you have to be a spy killing people to get where you want to go. Later on, there was this casino heist that reminded me of like Mission Impossible or Ocean's 11 because you kept switching between the different characters and they all had something different to do, and I was just amazed by that. And then there were some that were definite throwbacks to the old Call of Duty games where you're just in a complete war zone and you have to kill and move forward so that they'll stop spawning. And then eventually you get into this giant tank that's overpowered and you just start mowing through everybody to get to your final objective.
Yeah. I had a great time with this. And, I say that as someone who beat it literally in a day. Like I did it on a Saturday where I just, I did my cleaning, played for a couple hours, did whatever, ate lunch, played for a few hours, and then in a full day, it was probably like 8 hours at most. I don't know how long it was, but it was a great single player story. And I played, most of the Call of Duties in the last few years as far as single player, except for Modern Warfare 3. And I've always enjoyed them for what they are. Like they're just kind of 5-6 hour jaunts through scripted hallways or warehouse where you just shoot everything. And this is like, they finally sort of mixed the formula up enough to where it's like, it feels like it's its own story and campaign, which is what it lost for a really long time. And also the fact they just were seemingly afraid to evolve the single player in some way.
Yeah, I'd say, and I think I played Modern Warfare 2019, the campaign, around the same time that I was watching Jack Ryan on Amazon, and the two stories were sort of blending together to the point where I can't remember which one did what.
Yeah.
It was all set in like Middle East, and there were terrorists, and you were some sort of military guy undercover, but this one was crazy, and I think I'm going to remember a lot of these levels individually.
Oh yeah,
for a long time.
They're a lot more memorable than just shooting galleries.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. My number 10 is the Castlevania Dominus Collection. This was a stealth drop, I don't know, earlier in the summer, and this included the 3 Nintendo DS Castlevania games, which we long thought may not ever see released because of the touchscreen functionality, which most of them had. But this has Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, and Order of Ecclesia, which are all locked to the DS. You can't really play them anywhere else. Maybe the Wii U for Virtual Console, which I imagine doesn't exist anymore either.
Yeah.
But they're all also kind of like reasonably priced. Like, the games are probably 30 to 40 for loose cart, 80 to 150 for a complete copy. And you get all 3 of them plus a full remake of Haunted Castle by M2 for $25 on the Switch, PS5, Xbox, wherever else you want to play it on. So I love Castlevania. You know this, and everyone else does who's listened to us. And for me, when this was announced, I was very excited to play it. I got to the end of Dawn of Sorrow and through some of Portrait of Ruin, and I just love revisiting these games. These are some of the best games on the DS, and they look and play even better now on modern consoles.
Yeah, I really was surprised that it came out. Like you said, it was shadow dropped, and I had made a joke when the Advanced Collection came out. I was like, well, all we need now is the DS ones, and surprise, surprise. So now I have all 3 collections on my Switch, which I think is like the perfect place for them because I can take them on the go. Mm-hmm. And there's 6 games with those collections, well, plus the Haunted Castle, and however many are in the original collection for the NES and Super NES and stuff. And man, they are all so good.
Yeah, and you have the vast majority of the early Castlevania on this, on modern consoles, really, like, except for Symphony of the Night, really. But yeah, pretty much all the big Castlevania games are on any single console at any given time now for like under $75 if you were to get each collection, because you get them on sale, but it's dirt cheap for what they are. It's worthwhile. Yeah.
Speaking of Symphony of the Night, I guess I forgot to put it down.
Oh, I guess you did, huh? I thought you had it on your list. Maybe it was on your mentions, but yeah.
I was gonna put it on one or the other, but I definitely have to shout that one out because this was the first year where I went all the way through it.
Yeah.
I haven't beaten the Upside Down Castle, but at least I got to it for the first time. And yeah, I just really enjoyed that game. I love what it created with like these games now in the Dominus collection and everything. It was just a really fun time.
Yeah, I could go back to that one anytime.
Yeah.
I'll play through it. And yeah. Number 9 for you, Deucy.
My number 9, I talked about it a lot, I think, at the beginning of the year. It's New Star GP. It's that it looks like Virtual Racer, but it's more modern. It's the Formula 1 cars, and it goes through the eras. Man, that was such a surprise to me. It was such a bargain bin game, but it had so much to it. And for me being a racing fan, it was great to see.
It sucked you in.
Yeah, it was great to see what they did, the attention to detail they did, even though it's very basic. Like the cars have different speeds because of the eras they were in, the different sounds. You can update or build the cars from scratch and make them better and better in each era. I got a little stuck. I think I got to the 2000s, and I got stuck in the first or second race because every new era you start with a bottom tier car.
Oh, of course.
Even though you were like dominating in the previous era. And so I'm just like, okay, I got to kind of slog through this to build up my money and get better equipment and everything. But yeah, no, still a great time. It was one of my favorite racing games ever now.
Yeah, I still have to check that one out myself because I remember you telling me about it, and I just have been lapsing on getting it just as like everything else. There's a billion games to play. Yeah. My number 9, I originally had this at number 10, but due to yesterday's, we were going to record and the weather kind of messed things up for us. So I got into this game a little bit more, and I moved it up just one spot because I know I'm going to really enjoy it. But number 9 for me is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which just launched within the last week or so. I think it was like December 9th, and we're like December 15th right now.
Yeah, it was like Sunday or Monday of this.
Yeah, last Monday is what it was. Yeah, so I've only got to play this for a few hours, and it's done by Machine Head Games, who have done all of the modern Wolfenstein games, which I've beaten all of them, except for Youngblood, actually. And they do a really good job at sort of making these really immersive worlds, and like you have lore and collectibles all around the world, and that is definitely prevalent in Indiana Jones and Great Circle. And this game, you can tell like when you play it that it wants you to take its time with it, because you're an archaeologist, you're an explorer, so it's like you're kind of encouraged to explore these nook and crannies because you might find a new mystery to unfold or a new puzzle to solve, or just like news clippings, or like I'm finding stuff like recipes in Italian because the first sort of area is in the Vatican, so it's like I'm finding like a recipe for like what was it, like pasta and pepper or something like that.
Nice.
It's really fun. The story, it starts off like a movie. Machine Head Games has done an excellent job with just sort of making Indy come to life, like with all of his mannerisms. Like even when you're going like in a tomb, like you do this thing, you hold the left trigger where he raises the torch above his head like he does.
Oh yeah.
To cast more light, because otherwise it's sitting out in front of you. But if you do the whole handing over his handling it over his head, like you get more light in front of you, and you just want to take your time with every little thing in this game. So I'm diving into it. I probably would have put it higher if I could finish it in time, but given like I barely slipped this in as it was, I think this is going to be one of the best licensed games ever, from what I've seen so far, and it's definitely probably the best Indiana Jones game ever, which may not be hard to do given its history, but this is definitely one to play.
I got it day one because of Game Pass, but still have not gotten to start it yet.
Yeah,
I wanted to get through
the
Black Ops campaign because that was really fun, and then I was gonna start it yesterday or maybe even today, and nope. Nature had other plans.
I think when you get into it, like you're gonna enjoy it because it's really just an amalgamation of like Wolfenstein, Tomb Raider, Uncharted, all bundled into one, and it works really well so far. I've been enjoying the hell out of it already. Your number 8, Deucy.
My number 8 took up a ton of time earlier in the year, and I don't regret a second of it. It's the Outer Worlds Spacer's Choice Edition, which was like the remaster of everything for the modern consoles, and plus it included the 2 DLC packs, which were amazing by themselves. And I don't know how much I can say about it because our listeners will have heard me praise it highly in the early parts of the year. But
I figured this would be on your list. I was like, I would be surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah,
because you really enjoyed the hell out of this game when you were playing it.
Like it makes my top 10 because of just the amount of time I put into it. And like I said, I don't regret it. Like, maybe Close to the Sun or something like that. Like it was, for me, it was good start to finish.
Yeah. And that's ultimately what matters. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you can argue about how great a game is, but if you invested 60, 80, 100 hours, probably gonna be pretty good.
Yep.
My number 8 is Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. This is a great portable game, as is appropriate for the Switch. And in this game, you play as Zelda, and it's kind of like a twist on Link's Awakening. It looks like that kind of graphical style. But in here, you play as Zelda because Link's been captured by basically the Void in this game. It's sort of like it's like these pockets of darkness that are all over Hyrule. So you have to go in there and clean them out basically. And you're Zelda trying to rescue Link. So it's pretty much the polar opposite of a typical Zelda game where you're Link trying to save Zelda from Ganon in one way or another.
Yep.
And this game, you don't really have Zelda can't fight like Link does. Like you can turn to his spirit and have like sword attacks, but that drains like a magic meter. The main gimmick of this game, and it's primarily more of a puzzle game more than anything else, is you can learn echoes, which are enemies you slay, or there's like objects in the world you can learn, like crates, pots, trees. You can build on these things. So that might be certain aspects where you need to get up a mountain and you'll start to summon these water cubes that you just stack on top of each other and just swim up the little channel you made and go up there, right? So this game really encourages you to explore the echoes you've learned just by learning across the world, and then use them to solve puzzles or to solve boss fights. And it works really, really well. The only reason I didn't put it higher is because the combat does get a little old by then, because you're either reliant on the summons you have, which hopefully you've been collecting a lot, but those are AI driven, so those enemies can only attack when they're meant to attack.
Oh,
so it gets kind of annoying when like you have a fast moving boss and you're not every enemy is effective for the boss or the enemy type, right? So you kind of have to deal with that, or you turn to Sword Link, which again drains a meter. So it wasn't a bad thing necessarily. It's just by the end of the game, it was like, all right, this is at the point where if this game was any longer, it probably would lose its luster. But it was just long enough. I played through it, and it was definitely one of the best I played this year. You're number 7, Deucy. We're getting close to the top 5 here.
Here we go. 7 was right after I finished Outer Worlds. I jumped into this one because I had it for a while and never started it. But Mafia 1 Definitive Edition. And a few years ago, I played Mafia 3 and just loved that start to finish. and I never played Mafia 1 because I think it was on one of the older.
It was on Xbox and maybe PS. I think it was PS2 and Xbox back
Yeah,
then. So it's old. It's like 23 years old at this point.
I hadn't really paid much attention to it because back then it just seemed like a GTA clone, which, come to find out, it kind of is. But
it really was.
But it is pretty awesome because it's a lot more linear than any of the GTAs, so it's held my attention better. And plus, it's just all about, like the Godfather setting. You're working for one mafia boss, and he's in a family rival feud with another mob boss, and you just go about your business. It's in what is it in? It's before World War II.
I think it's in the late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah,
from what I recall. When
so
I played it.
All the vehicles are really slow.
Yeah,
but
like top speed is like 35.
Yeah, I didn't mind that. There was this one mission where you're in a race car, but it is kind of janky and it's fun. I actually luckily beat that in the first try. I just really enjoyed the story about everything, and I haven't finished it yet, but I look forward to it. I think I'm pretty close to the end.
It's a really solid game. I was telling you when I played it, it was kind of around launch because I got it from GameFly for like $10, and it's worth that for a playthrough. I mean, I know it's on Game Pass and whatnot now, but it's a solid game. Like, it does have its issues for me where, like, we talked about, I think, in an early episode too, where, like if you're in a car chase and you hit like a cardboard box or just any piece of debris, that's it. The acceleration on these old cars mean nothing. So it's like, if you hit a crate or something, that's it, restart, because you're not going to catch up to the person who's already maxing at 45 miles an hour.
This one funny story that happened, I might have talked about this on a previous episode, was when you immediately start the mission being chased by the cops. And so I was running away with this guy, and I accidentally take a wrong turn and go down this giant hill, and the car gets wedged between a tree and a rock.
Yep.
And we're just stuck there, but where we're at, the cops can't get to us or find us. And eventually the cop wanted level just goes away. So me and this other guy get out of the car calmly, walk across the street, get into another car, and then just complete the mission without being chased or anything. I was like...
That's one of those fortunate glitches.
Yeah, I was like, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's very anticlimactic, but thank goodness.
Yeah, so, it has a few bugs, but again, it's nothing that will really kill your enjoyment. Like, I think the checkpoints and everything are generous enough. Like, I think it's worth a playthrough for sure.
Yeah.
And it's definitely... And they got a new one come out next year. I think it's a prequel of sorts.
Oh, I think I did see that on the Game Awards.
Yeah, it's called Mafia something. I don't know what it's called, but it's I believe it's a prequel.
And it's set in Italy. I think it's like Mafia the Homeland or something like that.
Yeah, the Homeland. Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah. My number 7, Deucy, is Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I was looking forward to this when it came out earlier this year because I love Metroidvanias, and this one looked really great. It's one surprisingly long Metroidvania game. It took me about 20 hours to get through, and that's with me doing, I'd say, most of the side stuff. There's still a ton of collectibles I missed, but this is one huge adventure that has really tight controls. The boss fights are really great. I really love the art style of this game, and it is just so freaking fun to play because the world is so vast, it's so massive, and the prince in this one, actually, he's not even the prince. It's a guy named Sargon. He's a young member of the Immortals, and the whole gimmick here is you're supposed to rescue Prince Ghassan. And this game, I didn't know how long it was, so the more I played, I was like, wow, there's more to this game. Wow, there's more to this game. And it was, when I first beat it, I was totally prepared to be like, wow, this is like top 5, top 3 game of the year already. But, I played a ton more, and there's definitely games that beat it out on the list. The reason I didn't place this higher is because the games I placed higher are just that much better for it, which for me kind of tells you how great of a year it was for games for me when this, this is one of my favorites, and this is at number 7. So I hope more people play it. It's become cheaper as time goes on, and unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier in the show, the developer's been shut down thanks to Ubisoft and their garbage, but do not let this game go under your radar. If you love Metroidvanias or any Prince of Persia, really, like you really need to play this. Like, $15-$20, it's more than worth it at that point. Your number 6, Deucy.
Number 6 is the one sports game that made it into the top 10.
It's a good one, though.
Yeah, Top Spin 2K25. I put it on the top of the list because unlike those ones that I mentioned before, this one is the first time it's come back. And I'm sure there might be a 2K26 or 27, but this is the first Top Spin I've played since maybe 2 or 3.
I don't know. I'm curious about it because I don't recall when the last Top Spin came out. I know there was a Top Spin 4, which was on 360 a long time ago. And I don't know what came out after that. It feels like the series just fell off because we discovered this series way back on the Xbox when we rented it randomly at like a Blockbuster or something. So it's kind of crazy that like 20 plus years later they have 2K25, and yeah, it's freaking fantastic.
Yeah, it got me fully back into tennis games on a console, and I just really enjoyed the career mode, which I've tried other tennis games since then, and even like Topspin 3. I don't know if I ever did 4, but like, I don't know, they got a little too much into the sim type of things, and it was really difficult. This sort of is a nice balance, and yeah, it's just fun to pick up and play and win a tournament real quick and put it down for a little while. But yeah, it had to go up this high because it's probably the one sports game that I spent the most time on this year.
I think so, because you were hooked on this for a while, whereas I kind of fell off because, again, other games came up.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed this because, like you said, it's a game that's easy to learn, but it is kind of hard to master because they did try to include some of the nuances of tennis that, for people like me, like I'm not familiar with, like your positioning when you approach the ball, right? Or like holding the button to where like you sort of like charge it up and let it go at the exact moment to get the most powerful, crisp shot, which also affects the direction you're hitting too, because if you miss that initial charge shot, it actually throws your whole shot off too.
Yeah, you could end up just totally whiffing it out of bounds, which, you've seen in real life. Like these top pros miss an easy shot down the line. You're like, how? And then you're like, oh, I see why.
Yeah. But it adds a really great level of dynamism to the matches though, because you're both contending with that. Like again, it's really easy to pick up because the controls are pretty straightforward. But if you have both players who are kind of adept at what they're doing, you get some really great matches and volleys going where it's just you guys going back and forth because you're also understanding the flow of the game at the same time. Like seeing where the ball goes, where to center yourself and all that. Like it's a really great first return to form for Topspin, I think. I don't know what came out previous to this, but this is the first tennis game in a long time where even I enjoyed it. And I don't watch sports,
I enjoyed the fatigue they added to it too, where like if you get into some really long rallies, your player's going to get tired. And then when you finish the match and before you go into the next one, you're like, oh, my guy is not up to like 100% right now because I played too long in the previous ones.
It's really great. Like it does add that level of strategy too, because also if you're playing as a character who has more stamina, you're going to want to outdo the powerhouse and make him tired with his shots. So it's really, really cool. It's one of those tennis games that I think is worth playing. I'm sure it'll be on PS Plus and Game Pass at some point, like most sports games.
Yeah.
But, I paid full price for it, and I loved every minute I got to play of it.
Same here.
Yeah. My number 6, Deucy, and this is probably no surprise to anyone because I love fighting games. It's Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Game Collection Arcade Classics. So we did a whole series of episodes on the Marvel. Basically, we start with like the X-Men games and Marvel games, and then we shifted to the whole era of fighting games. We started with X-Men Chilling the Atom, and then Marvel Superheroes, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, etc. And this collection includes all those games plus the Punisher Arcade, which was only available to arcades, or you get a port on the Genesis, which was solid, but it's not the arcade version, right?
No, that arcade version is a surprise to me. That was fun as
hell. It
was
a great time.
Yeah.
It's so freaking good. It's pretty difficult, but it's a really great piece of arcade history in my eyes. And that's also what started the partnership with Capcom and Marvel, was that Punisher arcade game. So this collection has all of the fighting games from the X-Men vs. series, Marvel Superheroes and whatnot. And most importantly for me, they're all online. So this is a game where I can sit there for however long, 10 minutes, 2 hours, 4 hours, and just play through all 6, 7 of the fighting games that they rotate through on matchmaking, and I'll just sit there and play them all. So I was excited for this to come out because, we talked about in the episode, like a lot of these games were lost to time. They weren't really re-released. If they were, they might be delisted. It was really hard to get them. So now Capcom and Marvel, for whatever agreement they had, allowed this to be re-released, and it was easily one of my favorite games of the year because I just love all of these games. Like, I think they're so significant for their place in history on the arcades and consoles. Like, for me, like I go back to just like the Venom sprite we talked about. Like, it looks amazing 30 years later. So for me, this was an easy choice. I love this series of games, and $40-$50 gets you some of the best arcade games you could ever play in your life, and they're all online and they all play really well.
Yeah, for some reason I wasn't like super excited when they announced this one, but then I got it and I played it and I was like, no, this was a fun, good time. And even though I think in our episode I mentioned that a lot of them seem very similar because they came out annually.
Yeah.
It was still fun to go into each one and play them and see maybe just what was different here and there with the speed or the difficulty, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and the characters or some of the mechanics introduced or took away. And it's just a great package for what it is. And I got the physical version, of course, in addition to the digital one, because like once these games delist, they're a nightmare to get. So I'm glad that at least Capcom was smart to make a physical release for this too. So yeah, fantastic choice for me, an easy one on there. All right, Deucy, we were getting into the top 5, which is pretty crazy. So go ahead with your number 5.
So these are definitely the ones that like hit me the hardest, and I spent a great deal of time on. And to start it off, number 5 is the Dead Space remake, which I was just playing recently during spooky season. I loved the original on 360, got through all of it, and I wanted to replay it, but a lot of stuff got in the way from when it came out last year. Mm-hmm. I think this made it onto somebody's
my list.
Yeah,
list last year.
And I will agree with you. Yeah, this is definitely a game of the year choice.
You were right.
Yeah. No, I don't know what else there is to say about it. Like, the update in graphics is great. Like I said, this is how I remember the 360 version looking, but it does look amazing now. And yeah, I don't really go for horror games, but sci-fi horror is a genre I can get into.
Yeah. This is, EA for a long time got a lot of hate, deservedly so back then, but they really nailed it with this one. And again, like this game's unfortunate where it's like, it's really good. It's a fantastic remake through and through. I don't really have any complaints about it, right? There's no BS to it. It's just a pure remake. And yet it didn't sell as well as it should have.
There's even some set pieces that they made better.
Yeah.
Because they were kind of a slog in the original, and then they've sort of streamlined it and made it cooler.
Exactly. So this was a stellar remake. I think we were talking about before where maybe the impending release of Resident Evil 4 kind of hurt it, because I think Dead Space remake was January 2023, and then Resident Evil was March. And then even before Dead Space was Callisto Protocol, which kind of came out and, didn't make a big splash as it could have. So I think Dead Space just had a lot going against it on its awkward January release. But I hope more people play it because it is available on Game Pass. I think it's available on Plus. I can't recall. And it's freaking amazing. So I'm glad you put this on your list because...
And finally got to start it.
Because, it's definitely one of my favorites last year for sure. My number 5 is Stellar Blade. This was a PS5 exclusive. It's done by a company. What was their name? Oh, it's a Shift Up. They're a Korean studio, and this is their first game they've ever released. Apparently, their first mainstream game. Yeah, this game is it's in a post-apocalyptic Earth. There's a theme with themes I love here. And you play as Eve. She's like this sort of AI robot who, you're sent to Earth because at this point Earth has just been ravaged by, they call them Nightibus, which are this sort of like these monstrosities and demons. And the story's pretty cool. It's sort of like secondary to the main focus, which is just like the action of the game, because it's definitely more on the Devil May Cry kind of like beat 'em up brawler side, but everything again is just so tight, fluid. The graphics are gorgeous. This feels like one of those early 2000s games where it's just focused on being like an action kind of platformer game, and that's it. There's no bells and whistles, no microtransactions, nothing else. It just does what it does, and it excels. And again, this was another game where when I beat it, I was like, God, like, this is one of my favorite games of the year. And then more stuff came out, and I had to put it at number 5, which even to me feels like just slightly too low. But again, the top 4 games just were that damn good this year.
Yeah, no, I can see why.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so with that, Deucy, let's get into your number 4.
My number 4 may or may not be a surprise because of what I've talked about in the past, but Detroit Become Human.
I was surprised this was on your list.
This is way up there. And I think it's just because I couldn't put it down. I knew I was probably going to like it because I enjoyed Heavy Rain. I enjoy this developer. And then when I played it, I was even more surprised at how much I liked it. And yeah, it was like a good book that you finish in a day. I finished it in a week or 2.
It's pretty breezy. I mean, it's still like, I think it's like 8 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
Right. But you're for me, when I played it through like way back, I was enthralled the whole time. I was addicted to it. Yeah.
And I mean, I guess the only downside is that I don't know when I'll play it again because I enjoyed creating the story that I did, and that's the story I want to keep in my mind. Yeah, but there's just so many other trees that I could have opened.
So you ran the same exact thing I did because I beat it when this came out at launch, which again, this was a PS4 game and it looked amazing back then. This was like 2017-ish. And I finished it. I really enjoyed it. And then I was like, do I want to go through again and see what the other choices were? Then I saw the amount of choices there were.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like, there's no way. And now, enough time has passed. Maybe I'd like to go back and revisit it because I know I probably make different choices then. But I really enjoyed this game, so I was very surprised you put this on your list because I actually forgot you had played through this.
Oh, yeah.
This year. Yeah, it's really worthwhile though. My number 4 is Silent Hill 2. So this one is a remake of the original game that came out in 2002, 2001. Again, Konami, we talked about earlier in the show how it's like a lot of these companies are going back to their previous franchise that they hadn't done anything with. And I was apprehensive about this release because it was by Bloober Team, who they've made I think they made like Outlast, or I forgot what the horror series they were. But they've always been like kind of like middle of the road games, nothing spectacular, maybe buggy, not great. So I was already kind of not sure what to expect with this. And the more they showed, the more excited I got. And once I played it, I was instantly hooked in this game. And this is also what took me away from Metaphor Refantasio, which is why I didn't finish, is because I got sucked into this.
Yep. So
this game expands on everything that made the original game great. The atmosphere is there. It's even worse than before. This game the sounds alone will give you anxiety just walking through areas. Yeah, worse in a good way. It's just unnerving to play. It's just uncomfortable. There's things around each and every corner that you have no idea are going to pop out. They add this extra level of immersion with the DualSense controller where the radio static comes through the controller. So it's like you're hearing the ambient sounds of the game, which already are kind of anxiety inducing. And now you hear this, this loudening static that just tells you that there's an enemy nearby, but you don't know where. So I played through this game all the way through. I loved every moment of it. It is just an unnerving, just anxiety-inducing nightmare, but it is so freaking good. My only nitpick with it, and I don't even know if this is really a bad thing necessarily, is that I feel like it was maybe just a little bit too long. Like it was 18 and a half hours, which is kind of long for me. Like I kind of go through games reasonably quick.
Yeah.
And for me, 18 and a half hours is a pretty beefy game, and I feel like it could have been shortened just a little bit because I know this is like almost double the original game, which I find ironic when people complain that games are short now. It's like, no, Silent Hill 2 is also 8 to 10 hours. You just forgot about that.
Yeah.
Now it's actually like 18 to 20, maybe a little bit too long.
Didn't you spend about 17 or so on Resident Evil 4?
It was 19.
Okay.
Around 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that felt like it was, that had a pace that supported that, because in Silent Hill, like you're mostly creeping through because you're afraid of everything going around.
Yeah.
And there's just some sections that, there's a lot of backtracking, right? Because there's puzzles. Whereas with Resident Evil 4, like there's definitely instances of backtracking, but the levels are broken up in such a way that you don't really feel like you're spending 19, 25 hours in it. Whereas Silent Hill, it's like, by then you're like, wow, like this is a pretty long game. It's not a bad thing. It's just maybe a little bit too long.
And by the end of Resident Evil 4, you feel like a badass and you're just sort of...
You do. And you might be ready for another playthrough already at the end of Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
This, I was like, I need to decompress because there's 8 endings. I don't know. I know some of them don't require you to playthroughs or anything, but this is not a game that I can simply go through again immediately after the fact. Like it's a bit of a, not a mental wear, but like, you're just kind of like white knuckling the whole time,
This entry reminds me that in the Black Ops 6 campaign, they even have a couple levels sort of similar to this with a horror aspect.
Yeah.
And one thing that was unnerving for me was the area where a bunch of mannequins start moving around you.
Yeah.
I was like, no, this does not belong in my military shooter.
Well, and in Silent Hill 2, there are enemy types who look like mannequins.
Yeah.
Who just stand there, right? So yeah, anytime you involve mannequins, I blame this solely on Condemned Criminal Origins. That level with the mannequins in the mall is one of the most unnerving levels in any game, just for that fact, because they're mannequins, they're not moving.
Yeah.
And then you look again and something's moved.
And because you're in first person, you turn your head, but you can still hear the walking.
Yeah. It's a fantastic effect, but yeah, Condemned has ruined mannequins in any game for me for the rest of my life. And Silent Hill 2 is like, mannequins, how they're around every single corner and they don't make noise.
Don't take me to a Macy's, I'm going to get triggered.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, Silent Hill 2, there was no other choice for me but 4. I almost put top 3, but we'll talk about that game and why it took 3.
Yeah,
Silent Hill 4, which is a big surprise for I think both of us. All right, so we're at number 3, Deucy. So kick us off with your number 3 here.
Moving into the top 3, these are the 3 that I, at various points throughout the year, said, no, this is my game of the year. Wait, no, this one is. So these were all the biggest contenders, and my number 3 is Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh, fantastic
my
game.
God, I kick myself for waiting so long to play it. But yeah, it's just a beautiful looking game, fun. Even though it's a massive open world one, it's not Ubisoft, but it kind of feels like it sometimes on the map.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't mind it as much because it's really easy to just hop on your horse and ride everywhere, and you don't fear running into groups of enemies. You're just like, no, I can handle this.
You're exploring. You're a samurai, for God's
Yeah.
sake. Yeah. It doesn't get much better than that. Yeah.
And I'm still only in Act 2, a little bit further into it, but I look forward to finishing it completely. It's going to be one of those open world games, one of those rare open world games that I finish.
Yeah. I would really like to finish this game again because I beat it when it was on PS4, and they've had a PS5 update for a while now. And I'm curious how much better it looks because it really looked phenomenal on PS4.
Yeah.
And it's genuinely one of the most gorgeous games I've seen, just from a sort of design perspective and also technical. But there's some really, truly breathtaking scenes in this freaking game. There's stuff that you haven't even seen yet.
Yeah.
That you'll get to that you'll be like, oh, wow, this is truly incredible.
You'll have to do that black and white mode, especially on your Pro.
Oh, the Kurisawa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to try that because Ghost of Tsushima, I'm really happy you played this because, I'm sure I told you about this when it was out and like how good it was.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a game that's worth experiencing for sure.
I think it came out a little bit after Sekiro.
It's probably around that time. Yeah.
And I wanted to play that first, but then I heard I have that, but I heard that it was like hard, like a Souls game.
So Sekiro, I love that game, and I really liked it when I played because it felt like kind of like a Tenchu game.
Yeah.
But it is brutal. Like that game really relies on parrying, which normally I love that mechanic in a game, but the timing is very, very tight in that game.
This one, I'm so glad that they made it because it's like what I wanted from that.
Exactly.
But a little more approachable.
Yeah, it's a lot more approachable. Like, the pace of that you unlock abilities. Like, you're always unlocking something new in this game. Just when you think your tree is full, the game reveals more. And it's just, for me, it's like it's pretty perfectly paced.
Yeah.
Like, it rolls out at a good pace where you're not feeling like anything's kind of stymied or slow. And it's just one of the best experiences for an open world game you could possibly have.
The combat reminds me of the Arkham games.
Yes.
But then you can also on the fly change your stance and change your fighting style. And I was like, this makes so much sense and it just seems so natural that now I want Batman to start doing different types of martial arts.
Yeah. It has one of the most satisfying combat sort of how do we call it? Like combat loops, I guess we'll call it, where it's like, from challenging somebody where you could just do like a face off and just slash their throats instantly like a samurai and then fight the whole horde who's now afraid of you, right? It just unfolds at such a great pace that it's just fun to fight enemies. So stellar choice for number 3, I would say.
It was, like I said, for a little while it could have been my game of the year.
I could easily see, and you can make a case of that, but I also see your other choices as very valid for number 2 and 1. My number 3, this is by far the biggest surprise I've had for the whole year because I was not looking forward to this much at all. Like, I'd seen the trailers, I was kind of lukewarm to it, and I took a chance. And my number 3 for the year is Dragon Age: The Veilguard. So this is a lot different than the original Dragon Age. It's not so serious and turn-based combat necessarily. It's a lot different than Inquisition. Like, it's a little bit more open world and fast-paced. And in here you play as Rook, who kind of admittedly suffers from generic avatar syndrome because he's sort of like you, so he doesn't have like his own distinct personality necessarily. It's just kind of like these generic one-liners that you can select and might have an effect on the conversation or the world. And there are a few choices that do drastically alter the world, which are also exciting. But the story had me gripped the entire time. Like, you play as a Rook, and you start off with interrupting a ritual with Solus, who was in Inquisition, who was in the previous game. He's trying to pierce the veil, which is sort of this metaphysical, I guess we'll call it veil, between the sort of the Fade, which is like the demon blight world, and the real world. So his whole intent there is he's a god filled with regrets, and he wants to open the veil and unleash basically hell on earth kind of thing. You interrupt that, and this whole story happens where now you're trying to stop these 2 elven gods who escaped the Fade, and you have to recruit those companions who, much like Mass Effect, all have a reason to save the world and their own sort of trials and tribulations that you help them out with. And I did just about every single quest available in this game. It took me, I just finished it this week at about like 60 something hours. And I just love this freaking game. Like, the only reason it didn't make the top 2 or 1 is because the top 2 or 1 is that much better. But the combat in this game, the story, the dialogue, I just really freaking love this game. And hopefully you'll borrow it or something now that I finished it, or you'll play it. And I hope more people will play it because
it'll probably come to like PS Plus or something soon.
It probably will at some point because
all the other Dragon Ages are on Game Pass.
They are, yeah. So I don't know how well this game is doing. Like, it's gotten good reviews, but I think there's just a lot of idiots out there who just dismiss it for what it is and aren't looking beneath the surface of what it is, and I think they'll find a really great experience under it all.
Well, yeah, when I saw trailers for it, and even then it was pretty close to launch, I hadn't heard much about it. It didn't look like the typical Dragon Ages of the past.
No, and that's kind of a mistake because it does have its serious side to it, but I think the trailer, the way it presented it, like it made it look like almost like a Fortnite kind of game.
Yeah.
Like with all it
was very
bright
cartoony.
colors, cartoony, like the light tone and everything. They really didn't show anything that made the game really awesome, which is unfortunate because there's a really awesome game under here. But anyway, that was my number 3, and I feel like I wasn't even going to place that. I wasn't even going to buy that game this year. And then I took a chance and ended up being one of my favorite games of the entire year. Yeah. Deucy, you're number 2.
Well, we've talked about it before, and it got pretty high up last year. But just like you had one game that sold you on an Xbox Series X, and unfortunately, it was in a disappointment.
Yeah.
My game that sold me on a PS5 made it up here, and it's Spider-Man 2.
And that is a great game to have on your list, and you were in the top 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this I played right when I got the PS5 in March. It was the only game I had on the system for a while, and it was the only game I needed. And so it was going to be game of the year for the longest time because even though you guys had it pretty high last year, I don't think anybody actually picked it for the...
I had it as number 1 as it just like basically barely edged out Street Fighter 6.
Oh, okay.
Barely. Like it would have been 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
And I was mulling that choice over a lot because I love both those games.
But yeah, this one was just... I knew it was going to be good, but it like somehow surpassed my expectations.
That's how I felt.
And I am sad that there's no DLC planned or announced or anything. But at the same time, it was pretty long. It was a lot longer than the first game. And heck, it kind of felt like it was longer than the first and Miles combined.
It was, for sure, because it took me, just the story, I think, was around, it felt like it was like 18 hours or so, somewhere around there, 16, 18.
And so for me, that felt like enough. Like that was it had a good variety. The story changed up a lot. So like you think you're facing one main enemy at first and then all of a sudden it switches. It was just amazing. And I feel like the Spider-Man movies and shows and things need to take a page from these games that have come out recently.
Absolutely. Like
these are great Spider-Man stories.
They are. And Spider-Man 2 is really is the new benchmark for comic book games because I don't know what is better than it at this point. Like you can say like there's games previous to this that did things great, right?
But the Arkham trilogy.
The Arkham trilogy is fantastic,
yeah.
But those are not new. Like Spider-Man 2 is taking what it's learned from all those games over the last 15, 20 years, and it's masterfully blended everything together into like a truly like amazing experience. And like definitely a showcase for the PS5. Like I got the PS5 Pro. I have to show you Spider-Man on PS5 Pro, but it looks ridiculous. Like if you thought it looked ridiculous before, it looks more ridiculous. Like I have maybe that should be on my disappointment list, was like there's no story DLC for this because I was hoping there would be. Like of all the games that I would pay for DLC, Spider-Man 2 would be one of them.
They have so many side missions that led potentially to DLC, and then they're not doing anything with it, which means Spider-Man 3 is going to be jam-packed with everything that they set up in this one.
It's got to be, yeah. And I'm going to be stupidly excited whenever that comes out, because they still have Wolverine to release, which they've said nothing about. So I imagine that has to come up before Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
So who knows when we get Spider-Man 3, but Spider-Man 2, I mean, it's pretty incredible. It made my list last year and it made your list this year, but perfectly appropriate. Yeah. Number 2 on my list. This was almost number 1 for a very long time before we got to number 1. But number 2 on my list is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the second part in the Final Fantasy VII sort of remake trilogy, is I think they're what they've planned so far. I loved Remake, the first one that came out in 2020. I played through it. It was a truly great adventure and remake of the original game. And Rebirth is everything that game was, but even better. Like they basically did everything a sequel should do. So they added more abilities to synergize with your party members. So now like the combat is even more fast paced than it was before, because you still go to a battle screen, like, everything's real time, but now like it encourages you to play as different characters to level up your synergy bar. So you can do like combo attacks with everybody, which also increase like your limit gauge and everything else. So the combat in this game is a lot more geared towards team-based movement. So you have a lot more play with your party makeup. The music in here is absolutely incredible, and it's sort of like the retelling of, I guess, most of the second disc in Final Fantasy VII, like the OG, and part of the third disc before you get to like Sephiroth and all the crazy stuff. And I had high hopes for this, and it basically surpassed everything. I think some people might kind of nitpick at like the amount of minigames in this game, but for me, that's also part of what Final Fantasy VII was back then. Like, there was a lot of goofy minigames that you would get sucked into, and some of them here you could argue kind of get in the way because they're part of the main story, but they're so brief that I didn't mind them as much. And usually I dismiss some of the minigames if they're just kind of old. But in here you get like worthwhile rewards, and they do encourage you to do these things for good reason. So, the only nitpick I had was that the last boss is a nightmare.
Oh yeah.
I was complaining about it when I hit it, like the last final Sephiroth, like, God, he is so freaking hard. Like, I actually had to turn down to one difficulty level down because I tried like 4 times and it's a grind to get there. And I died. I was like, this is just preposterous. Like, I can't go back previous to grind or, level up my materia. Like, I just have to turn it down. It's impossible. So I think the last boss is tweaked a little too high, but I didn't care. For like the whole 65, 70 hours, I just was like glued to this game. And there's only one other game that could top it, which we'll get to soon enough. But before we get to our number one choice, Deucy, we have to go through Vito's list here.
Ah, yes.
So for Vito, we asked him to send him his list. He didn't really order this, but it's kind of ordered. I know it's a weird thing to say, but he just gave me a list and said, like, this is really the top, but I didn't really necessarily order it anyway. So for his number 10, we'll start with Asgard's Wrath 2. It's a VR game. I don't know too much about that. He has Metro Awakening at number 9.
Oh, is that another VR one?
No, that's... Actually, I don't know if that's the VR one. I think it is, because Metro Exodus is the previous one. So maybe Awakening is the VR one. Yeah. He has Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. That's the DLC at number 8.
That controversial.
I know. He stuck that one in there.
Yeah.
Number 7 is Helldivers 2. Number 6 is Stalker 2, despite the bugs and issues, as he noted. Number 5 is Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Number 4, another game that won big at the Game Awards, Balatro, that awesome poker roguelike.
I was happy to see that.
Yeah, it was really cool to see that game get notoriety because it's very successful. It sold like 3.5 million copies last week.
I've gotten back into it recently.
I need to because it's a great time. It's one of those games that you could play again 5 minutes or you'd be there for like an hour playing through this thing. Number 3, Astro Bot. Number 2, Batman Arkham Shadow. That's the VR game that Vito was telling us about last week.
Oh, never mind. I know what's going to be number 1.
Yeah, and number 1 for him. No surprise for me that I expect this from him. Number 1, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle for the Xbox.
I was going to say, I'm surprised the Batman one isn't the way he was like selling it.
Yeah, there's only one game that could top Batman.
In between then and now, Indiana came out.
If it's Vito, it's Indiana and Batman. Those are like the top 2 from when we were kids, like that you would be into. So he has a solid list too. I thought that was fun to call those out because he had some choices we had, and he ordered them differently. But
and he's got a fresh perspective on the VR scene.
He does, yeah, because he has the Quest 3. Yeah, it's true, too. Yeah. So, Deuce, I guess we'll get to our number 1, which you both had on our list as number 1. I think it's the only proper choice this year, this entire year.
It's the only one we have on the list that's like both on.
That's true, huh? That's the only game we had on both our lists, yeah. And the number 1, if it's not obvious, Astro Bot.
Astro Bot.
My God, Deuce. So... Sony announced this, I think it was way earlier this year, and I was instantly excited because I played Astro's Playroom, which is the VR game. They have, I forgot what it's called on the PS5. It's a pre-bundled game that's pre-installed called Astro something. That's really just like a tech demo for the PS5 DualSense and the PS5. So when they announced Astro Bot and how great it looked, I was really excited, but I didn't know how great it was, obviously, until I played it, when I was just like grinning ear to ear every moment of this freaking game. Like it is just truly like the best game I played all year. I
had only seen a trailer for it on one of the, I think it was the, what do they call the PlayStation?
State of Play.
State of Plays. It was like right before it was going to release, and I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, what is this? This looks awesome. It looks kind of kiddie, so I almost like didn't pay much attention to it. But the more I watched, I was like, no, this looks like something special. And then I saw you playing it when we were about to record an episode, and I was instantly sold. You let me play a level, and I was just like, I need more of this.
Yeah, you were like, you were just about like, I'm gonna go home and buy this.
Yeah, almost. Right away. Yeah. And it made my number 1 above all of those other games because, like, some of those other ones, great stories, great times playing it, but every once in a while I get hung up on something like I don't like the difficulty of this, or I don't like having to redo something. And that happened in Astro Bot, but it did not matter to me. Like, I played this to improve my mood, which I don't always say about games. I play a lot of games to just unwind and relax, but this one was genuinely like a mood lifter when I was having a bad day or something. I was like, I want to listen to the happy-go-lucky music. I want to just power through a level with these great little upgrades and miniature puzzles to solve. They weren't like difficult puzzles or anything. And it was just like old school platforming at its purest.
Yeah, I was about to say this is the purest video game that you could possibly define as far as like what a video game is. Like you look back to what really started us, right? It's like you go back to Nintendo and like Mario Brothers. This took the inspiration of all those platformers like Donkey Kong Country, Mario Brothers, you know, all the N64 era collectathons, whatever have you. You know, you could go to like the last 30, 40 years for what influenced this game, and they tuned it so perfectly to make this like the ultimate throwback, yet it's still modernized, streamlined. It's accessible to everyone. Like any, you know, you could get like a 6-year-old to play this or 4-year-old, and they would get some joy out of it. But the level of variety in this game is truly amazing. Like just like you mentioned, like some levels where you're going to like this almost like a micro Astro Bot, where like you're going through these tiny parts in the level, and you're doing that all in real time. Like you're just transitioning from like mini Astro to normal size Astro, and like the scale of the world doesn't change. Like you're still micro Astro in these big worlds, or like you have abilities where you know he's gonna play with air. Now you're floating around to like these different pots that are in the sky.
You get the little punching gloves like arms from Switch.
Yeah,
and I just all the boss fights were unique and usually utilized a different little super move. I also really enjoyed all of the bots that came from PlayStation's history.
that was like one of my favorite parts of the entire game, was just discovering those.
And like I didn't know quite a bit of the ones that they were referencing, but the ones I did know, I was just so excited to find and find more of.
Yeah, for me, like, you know, because I grew up on PlayStation obviously as well, and like the more I was finding, I was just like smiling the whole time. Like I was looking when they would get like you know, like even one of the characters from Wild Arms, for God's sake. Like who remembers Wild Arms or Devil Dice? There's some real deep PlayStation cuts that they include in here. Or like when you see, you know, you unlock like the Jill Astro Bot, and like she has like a typewriter add-on you can unlock from the slot machine.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like just those small touches like that, where it's just, you could tell there's so much care that was put in this game. Like they just want to make this a video game. Like they just want to make this to what video games used to be before they got monetized and like trying to uphold these metrics for, you know, what a publisher, right? They weren't trying to make the most money by intentionally doing that. They're saying like, we want to make an incredible game, an incredible experience, and that will sell it. Which is like what Nintendo was basically founded on back in the day. It's like, you know, if we make games good enough, they'll come to us. We don't need to make something that's purposeful to make money and then can it when it fails or something.
And I think Nintendo has still really stuck with that. Like they don't have their Mario game is monetized or anything like that.
Yeah, and they're smart because, you know, they know what risks to take, and then they learn from those risks or failures too. Whereas other things like, okay, we'll shut the studio down.
And I would make a case to say Astro Bot could be the PlayStation mascot finally.
I think so. I think, you know, because PlayStation used to have like Crash, Spyro, and it was really kind of fluid as far as like what the mascot was, which really you haven't had anything since Sega or Nintendo. Like you had Sonic and Mario, and, you know, Xbox has Master Chief arguably.
Yeah.
PlayStation really hasn't had anything since, and now you have Astro, which should be their next hallmark for as far as their mascot. The only thing bad about this game is that it ends. That's really my biggest complaint. Like,
Yep.
I played through this game. Like I got the Platinum Trophy. I know they've released a few levels in the last few months, but I want like a full-blown like DLC pack of just like speedrun or challenge levels, because for me, at least from my perspective, like the difficulty was tuned just right. Like there's definitely some difficult segments, difficult levels.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like they were unfair or cheap. Like eventually if you play through them, understand it, it's not as bad. So this game is just, you know, it's a 10 out of 10 in my book. Like it's not, that's not to say it's perfect, but there's no other game this year that I could say would top Astro Bot.
There were, I mean, I talked about it in previous episodes. I got frustrated on some of those ones that were just platforming, but I did feel accomplished when I beat them, and it didn't drag this game down any for me. I was just like, okay, I did those. Luckily, I don't have to do them again. And I can just remember all the good times from all the other little planets that you fly to.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really it for us. Like our number one, to me, felt like an obvious choice. I kind of figured you're going to put Astro Bot on there.
And it's fitting because it won Game of the Year.
It did, yeah. Game Awards, it swept 4 awards. I don't know how many it was nominated for, but, you know, it's well-deserved. Like I said, I really don't think, even looking at my big old list that I've played this year, there's nothing I think I could go back to and say, yeah, that would topple Astro Bot. There's really nothing. So I don't know. I know some people are upset about Astro Bot winning. I don't care.
Oh, really?
There's always, it's always
Idiots.
like the vocal skid marks who always have to chime in and like
Yeah.
be upset like Black Myth didn't win or whatever. And it's like,
Well, as long as nobody was going for Elden Ring's DLC winning
no,
it.
I don't think anyone was upset about that.
I think everybody was like, why is this here?
you know what it's Deuce? It's like people just like to bitch for the sake of bitching.
Yeah.
Like, it could be the most. They could give the game out for free with $100, and you'd still say something bad about it.
In the award show, when they were announcing the nominees, they had this giant orchestra, and they were playing songs from each game.
Yeah,
And they played the Astro Bot theme with an orchestra, and I was just like, oh my god, I want to go back and play it now.
And we could now because, like I say, they released a few levels,
Yeah.
so we get some mileage out of there, and they released some new Astro Bots from like the PlayStation history, like. I think Croc. You remember Croc?
Oh,
the
wow.
platformer?
Yeah.
He's in there now in like in the Croc suit, So I do have to go back and check it out, but I really hope that they release more levels, or I don't care. Just make another Astro Bot game. Like, I am sold at this point. Like, if this is what we can expect from like exclusive Sony platformers, give us more. This is what you should be doing more of. This is what really got us into video games to begin with, was this type of game. So please do more Astro Bot. If you haven't played it and you have a PS5, just go get it. There's no reason not to.
Yep.
All right, so that'll do it for our best and worst of 2024. If you want to send us your list, or if you want to make a case for why Astro Bot should not be number one, feel free. I think you're wrong.
It'll fall on deaf ears.
You'll fall on deaf ears, even though we'll laugh at you. You can find us on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcast. We're also on Threads at Legion Gaming Podcast. You can email us at legiongamingpod@gmail.com. Deucy, any final words, final thoughts for our best and worst of the year? Anything looking forward to in 2025, or how do you want to recap the year we've had?
I was just going to say it's been great to be doing this for a little over a year now.
It's crazy. We've
this
stuck to a
podcast
hobby.
and
50 episodes, by the way. This is our episode 50.
Yeah, and it was a great year to play games and revisit a lot of the games for the episodes. I look forward to what's coming in 2025. I'm not too specific because they never gave us dates.
I know.
I'm sure a ton of stuff is coming in the summer and then in the winter. But yeah, I just am happy to be doing this with you. Look forward to our future episodes. Look forward to getting our buddies back, Mike and Randy,
we got to do something with
for
them.
episodes.
Yeah.
They weren't here for this one, but I'm sure when this comes out, we got to say big congratulations to Mike.
Oh yeah, he's having a bit of a big life moment happening. There's gonna be a new gamer in town.
And so once he gets a little bit older, we can start including him into.
Oh my god, that would be incredible. Can you imagine like 5 years from now doing this podcast
Yeah.
or something? Oh my god, episode like 175.
What did you enjoy about the PlayStation 6?
Oh my god, yeah, that'd be really crazy whenever that happens. But
Yeah,
it's been a fun one.
It's been a great time. Happy holidays to everyone out there, and Happy New Year.
Thanks everyone. We'll talk to you soon.